Alrighty, CNT125, we're continuing Chapter 12. We just got done talking quality of service, class of service with our bandwidth management. Now we're into the section on incident response, recovery, that sort of thing. Despite any kind of preparation you might do, disaster security breaches do happen, can happen. So a company needs to have plans and things in place and training for your, I'm going to say your IT people as well as maybe your employees to respond to such events. And what do we do? An incident could be large or small, has adverse effects on the network, could be a security breach, could be infection, could be fire, flood. Disaster is typically an extreme incident. Network outage that affects more than a single system, limited group, might even bring a whole site of a company down, if you will. That would be a disaster, maybe a flood in an area, maybe a fire in an area, that kind of thing. So an incident response plan is just that. What am I going to do in the event of? What am I going to do in the event of a break-in? What are we going to do in the event of a fire? What are we doing, maybe an ice storm that knocks out power lines or something, or data lines? What are we going to do in these different events? And literally your incident response plan would be those different things. With this, we're going to do this. With this, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And the intent is to keep people safe, protect your data, ensure network availability, collect data on what went wrong, who's responsible, what actions should take, and so forth. So usually an incident response plan has these types of things in: preparing, detecting, containment, remediation, recovery, review, etc. So as we go down through them, preparation, again, let's say you get hired tomorrow. These things are already there and in place. You're usually catching up to what they're doing, and they might be updating these. A lot of times companies will review these things yearly or every couple of years, update, and you might be part of that update process. And some companies will even do a test or a drill day where they respond to an incident, making sure everybody understands their duties and doing their jobs, etc. Because in company, people leave, people get hired, people get promoted, people fill in. So at any point, these job roles should know, these people should know what their job roles are in the event of. So in the preparation, you're brainstorming, coming up with plans, documenting them, maybe even installing procedures, backup plans in place that you have this stuff already being done so that you can fall back on it when you need to. Step 2 would be detecting and identifying. Again, go back to the early part of the chapter with the monitoring and management and that sort of thing. Using that information, detect when an anomaly occurs and identify what it is. And then alerts be routed to the specific people or people that need to know. Step 3 would be contain. Try to limit any particular damage, maybe a specific site or a specific server, that sort of thing, specific data closet, specific building, whatever. Remediation, how are we going to deal with this? What team is going to deal with what? Bring things back online, and then when we're done, review. Did everything work as planned? Do job roles need to be adjusted, etc. And then documenting what got done and what plans could be put in place to maybe prevent this in the future, if it's at all possible. If it's something like a fire, maybe better detection systems, maybe fire suppression systems, etc. But if it's kind of an anomaly, a power outage out of your control, where the UPS is adequate, was the generator adequate, that sort of thing. Can any of those things be adjusted to respond to this? When an incident occurs, there's usually a couple roles involved of people. Dispatcher might be the person that notices and alerts and notifies the technical support and or the lead, and maybe starts documenting the record of the incident. This would be your dispatcher, if you will. Technical support specialist or specialists might be focusing on responding to a particular type of outage. Could be one person, could be a team. Maybe it's an email issue, so the person in charge of the email server would be the lead, and maybe some of the other IT people would be supporting that. And then manager, this would be somebody that's kind of like coordinating what do people need and or what other jobs need to get done. Okay, you need take care of this, keep working on this, find out this person, locate them to do this, that sort of thing. Kind of like the coach, if you will. And then last but not least, any public relations, anything that might need to be notified. If it's totally in-house, maybe just notifying the employees. If it affects maybe customer data, and notifying the customer, the customers, that sort of thing. Data preservation, sometimes as you know, a server or something gets compromised, we need to we need to document what got accessed and by whom, and with that information collected and kept in case it is needed for any sort of legal or prosecution type events. So some of the forensic data available for analysis can be damaged or destroyed if improperly handled. So if you don't handle any evidence you do have, you don't handle it correctly, it could get thrown out in any sort of court or legal proceedings, if you will. And in this case, your IT people need to know what is sensitive, what needs to be logged, and how kind of we deal with it. And it's going to depend on where you work, whether it's, health data, people, personal data, financial data, what has it be. You might have different things that you need to do. So with safeguarding sensitive information, what needs to get done is these sorts of things. Secure the area. In this case, a lot of times you're leaving whatever it is connected and running, but you might just disconnect like the Wi-Fi or the internet connection, but leave everything else running. That way it's kind of preserved, put like a fence around it, if you will. And now you have like a crime scene. You'll need to document this. What is going on? What was accessed? Has anything changed? Did you unplug it? Maybe there was a virus wiping out the hard drive kind of thing. Did you unplug it? Make a list of everyone found in the area, access the system, make sure nobody enters, don't leave it unattended. If it's unattended, who knows what happened while you were not there, okay? Monitor evidence data collection as well. Again, you're recording anything you can about the state of things so you have it for later. And then as you deal with any kind of evidence, maybe it is a hard drive you're preserving with evidence on, that would need to be handled and documented who handled what and when. That way it is preserved and it isn't out of hands improperly, and we don't know what happened to it during that lack of time or that gap in time. Monitor and transport of data and equipment. Again, this needs to be documented, who's dealing with it, who's moving it from point A to point B kind of thing, so that it's, again, there's no gap in where was it, what happened during this gap in time. And then obviously need to create a report on. And again, companies usually have policies or ways that you're doing this, and you would need to be familiar as a new employee, how would these things be handled. For disaster recovery planning, usually in places, your business continuity is kind of the key. What is necessary to keep the business doing what it needs to do? And that might fluctuate depending on the place you're at. So the company usually has some sort of business continuity plan, defines kind of the necessaries that need to keep moving with little or no disruption. So your disaster recovery plan is kind of like aimed at that. What processes do I need to keep running, and kind of how? How do I make sure these sorts of things keep running so business is able to keep moving, if you will? So your disaster recovery plan should include the following. Then this would change. As people get hired, people get promoted, people leave the company, those would need to be updated. Details on what is backed up, how it's backed up, etc. Network topology, redundancy, regular strategies for testing disaster recovery plan. Example, one of the area school districts I know, in the summer they do a disaster recovery drill in the summer. That way it doesn't affect the students in the school and the operation of the school, but they're still able to test. Did the UPSs kick in? Did the generators kick in? Are we able to reverse that? Did we lose anything? Did anything shut down that's not supposed to? Those kind of things. And plan for managing these crises. So the catch here is, to keep everything running, you need a lot of redundancy. Well, that's high cost. That's high cost. So having partial redundancy is lower cost, but it's going to take a little bit longer to bring things back online. And just having extra equipment laying around that's not configured or connected, okay, I can get it online. It'll take a little bit longer, but that is cheaper. I just have it in the box on the shelf that I pull out and, boot up and start configuring kind of thing, or moving config over to. So most companies will have some form of cold site, warm site, hot site kind of iteration for. If you have a branch of a company go down, where can I bring that back online quickly? And as I take a look, cold site is just that. I have an extra router, I have an extra switch, I have an extra access point sitting on the shelf. It's not configured, it's not running, but I could pull it out, plug it in, and move configs over. So hopefully I have all my configs saved, which would be part of your backup process you mentioned earlier. A warm site is those devices are kind of there, configured, and I just need to kind of like cable over to. The hot site is it's basically running redundantly, so to speak. Exactly. If I make a change to this router, I copy it to this one. It's running as a duplicate, ready to roll. And depending on the company, is the need for such thing. Disaster recovery as a service. Don't forget some of your cloud services, cloud resources could be part of this. I could have a cloud server out there running as my backup, or I might have a redundant cloud server, my main server out there, and I'm redundant over there that could back up in the case of, and maybe even a different region. So if I have one server in the Virginia data center, I might have a duplicate server in a different data center in a different region that could back that up almost immediately, if you will. That might be part of your recovery plan. All right, we'll come back on the next one and start talking power issues.